Best budget compound bow. That's right, folks. In this video, I'm going to talk about the best budget compound bow. I often get asked the question, Sean McVeigh, Sean's Outdoor Adventures, what is the best bow I can get for a couple $100? And really, it's been tough because most of your, entry-level bows that are halfway decent are about $300, $400, $500. Well, I got contacted by this company here, and they said, Sean, will you test our new compound bow, the Dragon X8? And I said, yeah, I'll check it out. Now, when they contacted me and asked me to do a review on their bow, I said, hey, would you be willing to give me an extra bow to give to my viewers? And they agreed to it. So, what I'm holding here is a bow that I'm going to give away to one of you. In fact, I've already got the person picked out down in Australia, down under. So one of my viewers who follows me, he's in need of a new bow. I'm going to send this to him. But the good news is I have another one of these that I'm going to give to one of you. And the way that I'm going to do that giveaway is I'm going to go live at some point, probably within the next month. And whoever shows up on that live feed, it's going to go to one of those people on the live feed. So make sure if you're not already subscribed and click that bell icon, make sure you have that bell icon on because that's going to notify you when I go live. So at some point over the next month, I'm going to go live and I'm going to give another one of these away. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go test this bow, and in a separate video, I'm going to do a video on how I set this bow up. Putting on the arrow rest. It already has a Peep Sight there installed for you, and with these the way they have it tied on, you could slide these on the string. But I'm going to go and shoot this bow through the chronograph, and before I do that, I will record a separate video on setting this bow up. Make sure you check that out. I'll put a link for it in the description section if you're interested in that. Although I am giving another one of these away within a month, I'm giving away another bow, a flagship bow, in the month of August. So I'm putting a scripture verse in each video. And if you want to get in on that giveaway, keep track of the scripture verses. Watch my other videos for those details. But the scripture verse for this video, John chapter 10, verses 1 through 21. So that's the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 1 through 21. That's our scripture verse for this episode. Let's go get into some testing. On the Dragon X8 compound bow. Basic specifications, the axle to axle length, which is the distance from the center of the axle here to the center of the axle pin here, is about 30 inches. So it's a fairly short bow, which is especially helpful for younger people. It's easier for them to manage and maneuver a bow that's a little bit shorter with an axle to axle. This is a split limb bow, so you actually have essentially 4 limbs as opposed to a solid limb. And it does have a yoke system, which is, I think, helpful when you have a split limb because each yoke going to the limb itself, each limb, it can help manage that. So you can have what's called cam lean, where your cam tilts to the side, causing lean. And by having a yoke system, you can add or remove twist to one yoke, and that straightens out the cam. And you'll see that more readily in a split limb bow. Split limb bows allow for a larger size cam, which sometimes helps with smoothness and different things like that. As far as storing energy, the whole thing about a compound bow is that it is storing energy, which will give more force to the arrow, make the arrow go faster than your traditional long bow or recurve bow. So a compound bow can shoot an arrow, let's say at over 300 feet per second, whereas a long bow with the same draw weight might shoot it at 180 feet per second, much slower. So that's what's happening with the wheels and this whole system of a compound bow. I said wheels, but this is a cam. It's more of an ovular shape. So cams have the ability to store more energy than a rounded wheel. The brace height, which is the distance from the center of the grip to the string, is about 6.5 inches. And traditionally it's believed that the longer the brace height, the easier and more forgiving a bow is to shoot. 6.5-inch brace height is about a standard. A lot of bows nowadays are coming with about that. Bows that have a shorter brace height will typically shoot faster than bows with a longer brace height. And the reason for that is the string is acting on the arrow for a longer period of time, which is delivering more force. So I'm giving all that information because a lot of people who might be interested in looking at this bow might be new to archery, and so I'm trying to give you some education as we go through this review. So the rest that comes with it is a hostage style rest. The arrow will drop down in and be held in these bristles here. This is a really good rest for a beginner. Once the arrow is in there, and I can put one on to show you, it's held very solidly. It can't go anywhere. So if it's a kid and he's holding the bow, that arrow's not coming out. So that is one of the nice things about that rest. There's no moving parts, so you don't have to worry about it malfunctioning that way. If you're wondering why I have an arrow with no fletching on it, it's because I do lots of bow reviews, and fletching with these types of rests, sometimes if you don't have it set up just right and the fletching makes contact with things, it slows the arrow down. I am going to be doing speed testing with this bow, and so in order to get the most accurate speed readings, I shoot arrows with no fletch just for these tests. Anytime I'm shooting a bow other than that, I use fletching because it helps to help the arrow fly straight. So the bow also comes with a stabilizer and wrist sling. This is very helpful, especially for a beginner. So you'll set it up so that the top of the wrist sling is not higher than the bottom of the shelf, and you slide your hand in, and then you're not gripping the bow, you're just relaxing the bow in your hand. And when the bow goes off, you don't have to grab the bow, you just let it go. This bow is not going to fall to the ground. See how it's not going anywhere. So you don't have to worry about grabbing the bow. When you grab at the bow, it can throw your shot off. So I do recommend using the wrist sling. I did a whole video on setting up and tuning this bow. I'll provide a link for it in the description section of this video if you're watching this on my YouTube channel. I'll also have links for these. I'm going to put an article on my Sean'sOutdoorAdventures.com website, which will have all the data I'm going to acquire today through this testing, as well as these videos. This is your string stopper here. If you are changing the draw poundage, when you loosen the limb bolts, that string is actually going to move back. So you may need to reset the distance here. You want the string to just barely be coming in contact with it. To do that, you're going to loosen these screws here, slide the bar, tighten them back up. It does come with a 5-pin sight with a sight light as well, so you can turn that on and off. This is very helpful if you're shooting indoors in low light situations. Sometimes it's hard to see your pins, so you can turn your light on. That will illuminate them and help you with the indoor shooting. If you're a hunter and you're going to be hunting out of a ground blind, which a lot of young people are, if you're getting this bow for a young person, it's great to have that sight light. There is a level in the sight, which I appreciate having. Helps you make sure you're holding the bow vertically. Now, why is that important? The top pin here is typically the 20-yard pin. The bottom pin is typically 60 yards when you have a 5-pin sight. If you're holding the bow on a slight angle and you don't realize that because you don't have a level, what that does is it causes your aiming to be off at those longer distances, so you're not going to hit the mark. You need to have the bow vertical at all times for this aiming system to be as effective as you need it to be. It does come with a peep sight installed. If you need to move the peep sight, you can slide these end pieces here and move the peep sight and then slide them back in tight. I recommend getting them in there as tight as you can. And I also use a gray Sharpie and mark where my peep sight is. In case it ever slides, you can see that by the marking from the Sharpie and slide it back to position. It does come with a stabilizer. This is a very light stabilizer. It doesn't do a whole lot. It may absorb a little bit of vibration. This is a fairly standard stabilizer for this type of bow. If you're getting more serious into archery, at some point you can upgrade the stabilizer, or any of the parts for that matter. And when you're looking at upgrading the stabilizer, typically you want something with weight in different areas to help offset weight of the bow. I personally use an offset stabilizer on the side to compensate for the weight of the components on this side of the bow, as well as a quiver. I hunt with a quiver on my bow. Okay, so that's a little bit of the specs going into it. This is the 70-pound limb. You can also get this with a peak weight of 60 pounds. Why would you choose one or the other? Well, if you're planning to only shoot at 60 pounds, you will want to choose the limb at 60 pounds because a bow generally performs at peak efficiency when it's at its peak weight. So in order to get the most out of the bow, you want to shoot it at peak weight if that's at all possible. So if you're only going to be shooting 60 pounds, get the 60-pound limb. Other than that, you can go with the 70-pound limb. The way they have this worded on here, it can go from 0 to 70 pounds. Once you get down in those lower poundage ratings, though, the strings will pop off fairly easily, so you're not really going to be shooting the bow at like 5 pounds. You know, you're going to be higher than that. Another thing I do typically, and I didn't do it yet, but I will, is I'll typically take a silver Sharpie and I'll draw a little line from the limb pocket onto the limb bolt. That will help you, and I do it on both. It'll help you make sure you're turning a full one exact limb bolt turn each time, and you line those up. If you don't get it perfect, you can change the tiller measurement, which is the distance from the string to the limb pocket here. You just take the same measurement on both sides. This measurement should be identical. If one is turned more than the other, that's going to change the tiller measurement, the distance the string is from here. It's going to change your cam rotation. It just changes the whole tuning of the bow. So it's very important to make sure you get exact. And I've been in pro shops before where guys are turning and loosening, and they get kind of close. They don't check any of that, and they're setting people up with bows that are not performing at their peak because they're not being real careful with those types of adjustments. So I'm mentioning that to you because a lot of people will be working on their own bow, and you'll want to make sure you track that. So here's my silver Sharpie. I'm going to take that and I'm going to mark the top limb bolt and limb. Now it's not going to show up too well. You might not be able to see that very well, but I can. And then I'll do the same on the bottom limb, and that's just going to help me keep track of how many limb bolt turns I have. There's the bottom limb. So if I can see that those aren't lined up perfectly, I know that I missed the precision a little bit, and that just helps with that. Okay, so the bow is currently set up at 31-inch draw, 70 pounds, and I did shoot it through the chronograph once already, and it gave me 320 feet per second. I'm going to shoot it again through the chronograph because that was the other day. That's when I was doing the setup and tuning. I took one shot. This bow is shooting perfect bullet holes through the paper. I can even just zoom over to the paper here. So there's the paper test. As you can see, I got one hole in the middle of the paper. That's the only shot I took, and it is right on. Perfect bullet hole. That's what you want to see. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my arrow. I'm going to take a shot through the chronograph. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bow at each draw length setting and shoot the arrow through the chronograph again. And we're going to track the speed. The lower the draw length, the slower the bow is going to get because the string is going to be acting on the arrow a shorter period of time. So let's see what kind of data we get. Actually, before I shoot the bow, I wanted to mention I'm giving one of these away to one of you within a month. I'm going to go live on my channel. I'm not going to announce when. Maybe I will send out an email to the people who are on my newsletter email list on my website a week in advance. Say, hey, it's going to be this week. But I'm going to go live. So if you're a subscriber to my YouTube channel, make sure you click the bell icon, because when you click that bell icon, it notifies you anytime I upload or go live. So if you got that clicked, you'll be able to know when I'm going live. I'm going to give one of these away for free on my channel. And I think I'll be getting a couple more of these to give away in the not too distant future. Okay, so we're at 70 pounds, 31-inch draw length, 350 grain arrow. It was 320 feet per second again. So we're right around 320 feet per second for the 31-inch draw length setting. Let's drop it to 30 and see what it's like there. I'll also quickly say that if you'd like to look at the draw force curve and all of the data on a spreadsheet, that's all available on my Sean'sOutdoorAdventures.com website. I do a product review section, and that's where I put all my bow reviews and this kind of data. So check it out there if you want to see that. So at the 30-inch draw length setting, the draw weight came to 68.57 pounds peak weight, and the speed was 303 feet per second. At the 29-inch draw length setting, the peak draw weight came down to 68.17, and the speed was 388 feet per second. Now, the way they design these modules is they do decrease in draw weight as you go down in draw length just naturally. That helps them reach those lower poundages at the lower draw lengths. The thing to note for yourself is if you're a 26-inch draw length and you buy the 70-pound limbs, just know that at peak weight, you're not going to be at 70 pounds. You're going to be a little bit under that. And in a few minutes, I'm going to find out what exactly would that number be if you're shooting at a 26-inch draw length, which is one of the reasons why I do this test. At the 28-inch draw length setting, it came in at just over 66 pounds and shot 272 feet per second with a 350 grain arrow. At the 27-inch draw length setting, we came in at 64.71 pounds, basically 65 pounds. That enabled me to shoot not just the 350 grain arrow, but also the 325 and see what our speeds were. With the 350 grain arrow, it was 257 feet per second. 325 grain arrow was 264 feet per second. So again, if you're shooting, let's say, a 27-inch draw length, and the max speed, or excuse me, the max weight that you're going to get, at least according to my measurements here today, is roughly 65 pounds. All right, so when I hit the 25-inch draw length setting, the peak weight was 59.95 pounds. So that's basically 60 pounds. That enabled me to shoot a 300 grain arrow, which is 5 grains per pound, just to give us an idea of the speed. So with the 300 grain arrow, 25-inch draw length, 60 pounds was the peak weight we got. So if you're a 25-inch draw length person with the 70-pound limb on this bow, you can expect to be shooting actually around 60 pounds. And this is common throughout the industry. I would encourage you, don't get upset if you're hearing those numbers and you want to shoot more weight. That's any of these long adjustability range bows, that's typically how they behave. So you're going to get that regardless of the brand. That said, the 300 grain arrow was 242 feet per second. The 325 grain arrow was 235 feet per second. And the 350 grain arrow was 228 feet per second. Now I'm going to continue to test the draw length down a few more inches, maybe down to 20 inch, and just see what happens. The next thing I'm going to do, and if you want that data, go to my website. I'm not going to keep going over each one here because that just makes everything really long. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the limb bolts out one turn at a time and test the weight. How much weight is coming off per one limb bolt turn with this bow. And I'm also going to shoot at 30-inch draw, 350 grain arrow, and then when I get down to 65 pounds, I'm going to shoot the 325 grain arrow. And then when I get down to 60 pounds, I'm going to shoot the 300 grain arrow. And that's all at 30-inch draw. So we can see what is the impact on speed with a 5 grain per pound arrow as we go down in draw weight. That way, if you want to shoot at 65 pounds, you're going to have a rough idea of the difference in a 5-pound speed difference. But I do want to give you a final synopsis here of the Dragon X8. But before I do, I want to crank this back up to peak weight and just take a few shots where you can see me drawing and shooting the bow, so you can see the bow as it fires, just to get a sense. But for the money, this is, honestly, this is a really nice bow, and I would recommend it. Now, this is a machine, and being in this industry, there's always a chance that someone's going to get one that has a little bit of a problem. I have no idea as far as customer service goes what you can expect. the people that have contacted me and talked to me about this bow have been really quick to respond. So I would think that they're going to, back their product. But what this bow is doing and able to do is pretty impressive to me for $200. Out of this price range, I think that it really is the best bow you can get for around $200. So again, let me turn the limb bolts back up and take some shots with it. And I would say if there was anything that I would change about the bow, if I could pick one thing, it's actually tough to turn the limb bolts, which is common for some bows. Some manufacturers have figured out a way to make it a little easier. That's the only thing that I would say. And I mean, it has nothing to do with the efficiency. It's just a matter of when you're doing some changes to the bow, it's, you need, I think, a little bit more than just the standard Allen wrench. This helped me get a better grip for turning. So right now the limb bolts are all the way backed out, so they're fairly easy to turn. As I get up near the peak weight, it'll be a little tougher to turn. But again, not a big deal. My point is, though, for what you're getting with this bow, I do think it's a good value, and I do feel comfortable recommending it to people who are getting a bow to get started in archery. And I will, get links for this. And while I'm talking and turning the limb bolts, it's very commonly noted in a lot of manufacturers' manuals, you really don't want to turn more than 2 full limb bolt turns on a side at a time. Like, you don't want to tighten this one all the way in and then tighten that one all the way in. This is a system that works. It's very intricate, and so you want to keep the balance of the system. So you typically just turn 2 full limb bolt turns at a time. Okay, so I'm at 30-inch draw, 70 pounds. Just want to shoot this for you so you can see it. Pretty nice. And it doesn't jump real bad out of your hands. There's been plenty of bows that I've paid even more money for that when they shoot, they feel like they're jumping out of your hands. At this peak weight setting, it stays right there in your hand. It's really a good value. I definitely think that just after shooting it a little bit here today, and of course I've only shot a little bit, but it's worked very well. Obviously, in the long term, people will, like if somebody buys one of these and uses it, they'll be able to give a more long-term use review and some feedback on it. But just out of the box, I do think it's good. I would encourage you to get some bowstring wax and regularly wax your bowstring. That's common for any bow. And if you're watching on my YouTube channel, I will put a link in the description if you want to get any more information or potentially purchase one of these. If you're on my website or if you're on some other platform, you can go to my website, Sean'sOutdoorAdventures.com, and you can see the full write-up that I do with the graph, the draw force curve, all the data, and also I'll have links there for if this is something you want to purchase, things like that. So I want to thank you so much for tuning into this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that if you haven't already subscribed, that you will subscribe and click that bell icon so you have a chance of winning one of these in the very near future. Again, I'm Sean McVeigh of Sean's Outdoor Adventures. Thanks for watching, and God bless.